2022 in this world that we're in, that such we could be watching and witnessing the just the horrendous scenes that we're seeing come out of the Ukraine. And I think it's really hard for us to quantify and to really measure the pain and sorrow that people are experiencing. The human toll is really, I think, hard for us to really even capture. And I would say that our only hope and, of course, our prayer is that we pray that this should be the final gasps of a broken and dysfunctional world, and that very soon we should be able to see the fulfillment of the ancient Jewish vision and the ancient Jewish promise of a healed and a wholesome world, that these should be the final gasps of this broken and dysfunctional world, and we should be able to turn the corner into something much brighter and much better. May this be very, very speedily. We're very honored tonight that Rabbi Levitansky from Sumy, Ukraine is here to join us. He's basically 24/7, either on Zooms right now, trying to get the word out, or coordinating efforts to help those back in Sumy and in Ukraine in general. So I don't think he's been doing any sleep for many days already. This is no different than what I remember Rabbi Levitansky doing when I knew him many years ago. He's a good colleague, a good friend, who's very dedicated, of course, to the cause, to the people. And I think this is an opportunity for us tonight to get a behind the scenes, on the ground look at what was taking place and what is taking place right now in Sumy, to hear a little bit about what has been happening. I have posted on the chat, if you'd like to make a donation at some point in time to help the efforts and the relief efforts, the refugee efforts, and helping those that are still left behind. Personally, I reached out to Rabbi Levitansky early this week. Someone had asked me to reach out and find some relatives of theirs that were lost in Sumy. Rabbi Levitansky was able to track them down, make sure they were okay, make sure they had food, and gave them contact information. So if they needed help, they would be able to get that help. So this is an ongoing and evolving and, of course, very difficult situation. So if you want to donate and support, on the chat, there are options. Of course, there's many different Chabads in Ukraine. There's an option there where you can go on Chabad.org and choose a community, or just go to the general fund. And of course, every penny of it, every penny is going to help those unfortunate Jewish communities and Jewish refugees and people in the Ukraine. We've put everyone on mute. We're not going to be, we have quite a large crowd here tonight. Sorry, am I unmuted now? Yes. Sorry. So I have there are questions. There are questions that we've given Rabbi Levitansky beforehand. We're asking everyone not to really ask questions tonight, either on the chat or on thing. There's a lot of us here. There's about 170 of us here, quite a few people. So we're just asking everyone, just listen, take what you can in, and whatever we can learn, we can learn. And again, if you want to donate, on the chat, at the top of the chat, there's opportunities to donate. I'd like to hand the floor over to Rabbi Levitansky, and just to kind of for him to address some of the things that we are witnessing and his ordeal. And just, again, I've given him a list of questions. Hopefully he still has that somewhere. If he needs help, he'll let me know.
The host is not allowing. There we go. Can you hear me now? Yeah, I'm unmuted. Okay, beautiful. Okay, so good evening, Atlanta. As Rabbi Silverman said, good friends from many years ago, and many other friends I see here, many other rabbis who are also close friends of mine. You guys are lucky to have such wonderful rabbis. I am born and bred in Simcha Monica, California, and 17 years ago, a little over 17 years ago, moved with my family to Sumy, Ukraine. Sumy is, I know now people have become more aware of the geography of Ukraine. If I told somebody a year ago where Sumy was, most people didn't really understand, and I had to explain. I think now people have already learned the map. But we are on the northern border of Ukraine, which is the Russian border, and Sumy is actually about 40 kilometers from the border. It's a half an hour drive to Russia. And it's not a very big city, very nice city, and the city is actually like a capital for the Sumskaya County or Sumskaya region. In Russian, they call it the Oblast, and that whole region is actually a good part of the Russian border. We've been living here for 17 years, built a nice community, thank God, with shul and a preschool and after-school programs and classes, student programs, anything you would find in any nice Jewish community. And although not very large, still very close-knit, and people are very warm, family-style community. And I want to add and start off by saying this, because I know that there's a lot of misinformation that's been put out over the past few months. And it's a little bit disturbing, because being in Ukraine and living in Ukraine and seeing how the community has grown and seeing how other cities as well have grown, it's very difficult to watch how information is being put out that Ukrainian people some are anti-Semitic or fascist, or they have something against Jewish people, etc. I could say for myself, living in Sumy, that throughout all of these years, we haven't had any incidents, not one anti-Semitic incident. We have a menorah that we put up every Hanukkah in the square in the center of the city. It stays there for the whole Hanukkah. We light it every night. The mayor comes to light it. The governor comes to light it. We haven't had any issues whatsoever. People are very respectful. People actually come up to me in the street and ask me if I can bless them, because they see me as a religious figure. The city is very religious. People are very, they are part of their religion, and they respect anybody who is proud of their religion. Actually, the only thing that our children walking through the streets, the only question that they get is that people want to know, how do you keep the yarmulke on your head? Is it glued on your head, or do you have some kind of special, that's what bothers them, and that's the only thing that they can find to approach myself or the children to ask. People are very helpful. The Ukrainian people are extremely hospitable and very warm. So even though in our history, we know that the Jewish people have suffered in many countries, and Ukraine is not an exception, especially during the Second World War, where Jewish people were persecuted in Ukraine. And before that, there were pogroms in Ukraine. And if you read history, we see it. It's a fact. It's an undeniable fact. But just as well, it's an undeniable fact that today, in today's day and age, Ukraine has developed into a normal society, and people on the street are very friendly, especially the Jewish people. It's not a secret that the president that was elected in Ukraine a little over a year ago, President Zelensky, is also a Jewish person, and he doesn't hide it. People know that he's Jewish, and it hasn't been an issue about the fact that he was elected a president, and the fact that he's Jewish or not Jewish. People elected him for his capabilities or because he was famous. The fact that he's Jewish hasn't been an issue. So I'd like to get that out of the way. I know Rabbi Silverman said no questions, and that's a question that I always get, especially in these times. As I said, we've built up our community in Sumi, and we have all types of classes. One of the things that we have a minyan that come in the morning every day, and they learn for an hour, and then we have our women's group also that learns once a week, and these have become our core members, so to say, of our community, and they become very active in the community, and we've grown over the past few years. In these days, these upcoming to the crisis that we're in now, I know that all over the world, the news, and I've got messages from the American embassy almost daily, get out of Ukraine, Russian invasion coming, there's 100 troops on the border, 150 troops on the border, Russia is going to invade. It's just a matter of a day, matter of 2 days. It's going to be tomorrow. That was the feeling of everybody around the world. But within Ukraine, and I could say especially where we were in Sumi, and we're right on the border, people weren't thinking about it. It wasn't a topic of discussion. It wasn't something that people prepared for. And I don't want to say that people were naive, because they weren't naive. They knew what was happening, but we couldn't imagine in our wildest dreams that something like this could happen today. Now, it was so far-fetched, it was so unfathomable, so ridiculous to think that an army will invade another country for absolutely no reason, just because I'm bigger and stronger, and just because I can, for absolutely no reason. Nobody believed that it would really happen. Everybody understood that there was some kind of politics going on, that there was, pressure happening, and all different things that were, going on behind the scenes, but nobody really believed that it would happen. And because of that, people didn't really prepare for it. People were not prepared for what we're going through now. Some of the rabbis in some of the larger cities started preparing for war. They started buying tons of grains and other long-lasting food items, and storing it in warehouses. And other rabbis were like, why are you doing that? Like, well, you really believe that there's going to be an invasion? There's going to be a war? We're going to have to stock up on food? And they were like, well, whatever, just in case, we spent, a few $100,000 on sleeping bags and mattresses and grains and macaroni and all these things just in case. So if there isn't a war, we'll somehow use it for our schools. The average citizen wasn't thinking on those terms in any way, and they weren't preparing for it. They weren't preparing for war. They weren't prepared for war. On Thursday morning, when we heard the sirens go off, my initial reaction was, and I made an announcement to my children, I said, that's the shofar blowing because Mashiach is coming. That's how ridiculous it was to think that there's actually a siren going off. I didn't know that Sumi had a siren. That's a side issue. I didn't know we were that advanced. But we actually have a siren in our city that goes off, and it gave us warning that everyone should go to the bomb shelters. Where are the bomb shelters? Nobody even knows where the bomb shelters are. They haven't been used since the Second World War. And you're getting announcements. The city was making announcements. You should go to bomb shelters, go to basements. This was like total shock to everybody. People were caught totally off guard. On that morning, that Thursday morning, I automatically mobilized all of our volunteers. And for this, I thank God for 2 years of COVID, where we were in lockdown after lockdown after lockdown, and we had a system in place of volunteers who would go and buy produce and things in the stores in order to deliver to homes, especially to people who are homebound and they can't go out and buy things. So that system was already in place. We automatically mobilized, went out to the stores to buy whatever we can to store for the next few days. Again, because we were caught by surprise, because we weren't really prepared for this type of a situation. Nobody even knew how long this is going to take. And at that point, it was like, oh, this is just going to be like a day or two, and this is all going to be resolved. There's going to be some kind of a peaceful agreement, and it's all going to be over. And as time goes on, and I believe we're already in day 14 or day 15. I lost count, because as Rabbi Silverman said, I haven't slept in a long time. I don't know the days and hours anymore. We realized this is going to be serious, because there's only so much food in the warehouses, and once the Russian army came in and surrounded cities, started literally putting a siege around all the different cities, there was a lack of incoming produce. People can't leave the city, and it becomes a difficult situation. So on the first day, on the second day, we had bought out a lot of things, whatever we could. Then it was Erev Shabbos. Shabbos was coming in, and actually the siren sounded about half an hour before Shabbat, and we felt like this is like we're in Israel or in a Jewish community in Crown Heights. If you've ever been there, they have the air raid siren that goes off before you have to light Shabbat candles. So we were joking that this is our signal that we have to light Shabbat candles. We had a Zoom conference with our whole community, and we said that we're going to light Shabbat candles, and we want everybody to pray that this ends peacefully. And like we say, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom means Shabbat brings peace. So we lit the Shabbat candles. We were told that our lights have to be out at night. They'd want everybody, all the city lights were put out, everything was put out. And we had our Shabbat meal by candlelight, which was very surreal. Felt like we were going back thousands of years. And it was actually very quiet. The shooting stopped, the artillery, we didn't hear any booms and bangs, and nothing was happening. Friday night was very quiet. We actually slept for the first time in a few days. And Shabbat morning, when I woke up, I thanked the Russian army and the Ukrainian army for letting me have a nice night of sleep. The whole Shabbat went by, it was quiet, and I was convinced that there was a ceasefire because there was no other explanation. And after Shabbat, I went to get my phone to check to make sure that the ceasefire happened. And as I was looking at my phone, we heard this boom that it was so powerful, so loud, and the entire house just shook. Come from California, so I'm used to earthquakes, but this wasn't just the shaking of the house. This was like a boom that was like an explosion that was so loud it felt like it was right in our backyard. The panic, the fear that grips you at that moment is just indescribable. And we realized, like, this is real. This is not a joke. We took our kids, we ran down to our basement, which served as our bomb shelter, bunker, and we could just hear the sounds going off. It was so powerful, so incredibly loud. It happened to be that was the Ukrainian army exploding gas tankers that were coming over the border to go down to Kiev to refuel the Russian tanks. And they were, I guess, stopping them along the way and exploding them. And that's what we were hearing. But it was just, it made it real. It made it real. And then from then on, everything just continued, and it started getting more intense and more intense. On Monday, they were rationing bread. There were lines to get bread, and they were only giving a half a loaf of bread per person. And that just brought back scenes from the Second World War, stories that we've heard from our grandparents. It changed the whole picture of what was happening. We pinching ourselves, thinking, is this real? Is this really happening now? Is this like something that, and we're living through it, we're watching it with our eyes. And it became much more difficult to find food for people. Because we volunteer all the time, and we have all different types of social services, so we had connections with some of the warehouses, and I was able to go there and get food items specifically for elderly people that are home and that can't get out. We had curfew from 6 in the evening till 6 in the morning. Lights out, pitch black outside. All the city lights are out, and all you hear is shooting and bombs going off, sometimes closer, sometimes farther. And that's what was happening. Sumi became in a siege. We were literally under siege. Nobody could leave the city, and we had to make do with what we had and keep our community safe as much as possible. And that lasted for pretty much for a week until the following Thursday. On Wednesday night, the airplanes started coming over cities like Kiev and Kharkov, and I'm sure you guys saw more of this than I did. I tried not to look too much because it was just too difficult to watch. But airplanes were bombing apartment buildings, all different types of administration buildings that are in the city, in the middle of the civilization. And And then it started happening in Sumi. At that point, many of the rabbis in the cities decided that it's time to go. We need to get out of the city. Until then, it was armies fighting armies, and now it was getting a little bit more serious, and we had to leave. To be honest, I'm not the most emotional person. I don't know if that comes across over the camera, but we were pretty strong. We kept strong pretty much up until then. But at that moment, when we realized that we might have to leave, and we are going to leave our community behind, many of them who have no way of getting out, that was a very difficult moment for us. I must say it was very emotional. I cried. Just thinking about it is very difficult for me, and we had to make that decision. At that point, I thought I would send my wife and children on their own out of the country, and I would stay behind to still try to help people. And I looked for a driver, taxi service, anybody who I can get a hold of, who I thought could make the trip, and nobody would do it for no money in the world. The roads are just too dangerous, and everybody was of the opinion that it's safer to be at home, even with bombs falling on your head, than to travel on the roads where you're uncertain of what's going to happen. And on Thursday morning, I said, that's it, we got to get out. And we packed up our own car with whatever we thought was most important. Again, another defining moment in life, where you need to run and think of the most important things that you have. What are you going to take along with you? And we headed out. We headed out on the road. I can tell you that the road was pretty much what was described. It was carnage all over, blown out tanks and army trucks, and nobody knows, where the next when the next firing is going to start and where it's going to come from. We prayed a lot, and people all over the world were praying for us, and thank God we made it out of that dangerous part of Ukraine, and we headed out towards the border. We ended up going to Moldavia. It took us 24 hours of driving nonstop from our city to Moldavia, a trip which should have taken about 10 hours. It took us 24 hours. And again, we hadn't slept in a while. I still joke that my car turned into a Tesla and was driving on its own, because I have no clue how we actually made it through the night and all the way up until early morning, driving through those roads, which were pitch black, being stopped every 15-20 minutes by another roadblock, another checkpoint. It was difficult, and all this time we kept in touch with our community, trying to think of how we can get them out to safety as well. I want to go back a little and just mention about the difficulties that people are having being locked up in a city like Sumi. As we were leaving on Thursday, I got a call from one of the members in our community, who actually one of our minyan people, who comes every morning to daven and to learn. Unfortunately, he has to go through dialysis 3 or 4 times a week, and because of the war and because of the curfews and difficulties in finding taxis to drive around even in the city, he wasn't able to go to his dialysis. And he called me on Thursday morning and he said, Rabbi, I'm feeling extremely weak. It's hard for me to breathe. I don't know what to do. And I know that in this situation, the only thing that's going to save me is if I get a blood transfusion. And I called the clinic to ask them to give me the blood transfusion, and they said that they're not allowed to give out any blood because they're saving it for the army. Please, can you help me? Now, I'm not a big doctor. I don't understand much about blood transfusions or dialysis, but a Jew in need. I said, you know what? Give me a few minutes. Let me find out if I can do anything. And I called the hospital. I called some of the doctors that I know there, and they said, Rabbi, you're not going to get it. This is just, we don't have access to it even. I said, tell me who I have to contact. Who's the person who is in charge? Who's gonna give it to me? They said the only one who can do it is the head doctor of the city, really. And I know the head doctor of the city from previous encounters. I called him and I said, look, I have this person. He needs a blood transfusion. I need you to give him the blood transfusion. The price is whatever you tell me. It's not a matter of money. I just need him to get a blood transfusion. I need you to do this for me. And he said, it's difficult and I don't know what's going to happen and it's going to be very expensive. And we went around in circles and at the end he said, you know what? Okay, Rabbi, tell him to come into the hospital. I'm going to have it done, but I'm telling you, you're going to have to pay the price. It's going to be expensive. I said, whatever it is, let me know. Just get him that blood transfusion. And thank God, he was able to go to the hospital. He was able to get the blood transfusion. Later on, the head doctor called me. He says, Rabbi, $1,000. I need it in cash. Please have it for me so that I can pay off whoever he needed to pay off in order to get that blood. And these are things that rabbis are dealing with in all of the cities throughout Ukraine, whether it's medicines or it's food or any other supplies that are needed to help the people who are there and they're locked up in their homes and there's nothing that they can do. Whatever it is that we need to do just to save a person's life, that's what, we'll go that extra mile. Going out into Moldavia, which is the other side, the other border, 1,000 kilometers away from Sumi, we were greeted by the Chabad rabbis who are in Kishinev, and this was just before Shabbat, a week after the war had begun. There were hundreds and hundreds of people who were coming through the border, and they needed a place to sleep, they needed a place to eat, they needed to be taken care of, to be sent off to wherever they were going further, whether it be Israel or Europe. The operation that was going on over there in Kishinev was incredible how the Chabad rabbis there were just working around the clock, literally, bringing mattresses in wherever they could, renting out campsites so that they can give shelter to all of these people, and cooking food for hundreds and hundreds of people every single day. They were doing this literally round the clock. And what struck me most, I should say, sometimes when you're on the giving end and you're the one who's doing and you're the one who's arranging and helping people, it's difficult for you to really understand and feel what it's like to be on the receiving end. When we came to Kishinev with literally nothing, with a few small suitcases, and we needed to be put up and fed and housed for Shabbos, it was an incredible feeling to be on the receiving end and to realize how gracious how gracious these rabbis are and what they're doing. It was so incredible. One of the most striking things was when we came in to the shul in Kishinev. One of the rabbis says, "Okay, all of the kids go into the next room over there. They had like a playroom or something, and you're gonna find bags of toys. Choose a couple of toys, whatever you want, and take it along with you." And I was just watching it. I thought, like, who's thinking about toys here? We're talking about saving our lives. We need food. We need shelter. These rabbis weren't thinking only about the basics. They were looking to make children happy. Hundreds of children that were coming through over there, coming with nothing, and they made sure that these kids had toys to play with, make sure that they had something extra that they could take along with them. It was just unbelievable. After Shabbos, we went from there to Romania because there were no flights out of Moldavia, only out of Romania. And in Romania, we met the same picture. There were rabbis who rented out a campsite over the border in Romania, and people are coming in. Hundreds of people are coming in, and they're feeding them and housing them, and then sending them off on flights to Israel or sending them off further out into Europe. The same scene, just all over again. And that's pretty much in short what I can describe from on the ground. And I do want to stress a few things which I learned from this whole ordeal, things that really moved me. One of the things that moved me in the beginning, and then as time went on, it became even more, was the outpouring of love and concern and prayers that were happening around the world for the people of Ukraine. It's an incredible feeling to realize that millions of people around the world are focused on you and praying for you, and just bombardment of messages, emails. What can we do to help? How can we help? Give us anything, whatever you need. Just tell us what you need, and we're gonna have it for you. It's an incredible feeling. I shared with my community a video of a school in Brooklyn, where the children are reading the 20th Psalm in Psalms, in Tehillim. It's a 45-second video, and my community members posted it on their social media, and it went viral within Ukraine. And Ukrainian people, non-Jewish people, were commenting about how beautiful it is that the Jewish people around the world are praying for Ukraine. And they're convinced that the prayers of the Jewish people are keeping them safe and causing miracles to happen for them. And I'm not the biggest military analyst, not my field, but from what I understand, from what people are saying, the fact that Ukraine is still standing is a miracle in and of itself. The fact that the small little army that has no arms, they're fighting with Molotov cocktails, they're fighting with their bare hands against the second largest army in the world, and they're being successful, and they're fending off hundreds of tanks and armory that's coming into their country, is an incredible miracle. They see it as a miracle. One of the priests in Sumi was telling his congregants that we're seeing miracles that are described in the Bible, and that those types of miracles only happen to the Jewish people. So it must be that because the Jewish people are praying for us, we're we are witness to these types of miracles. We're seeing this incredible feeling from Jews and non-Jews alike that they're coming to the realization that God runs the world and that prayers are effective and they really keep us safe. And it really was a learning moment for me. Very, very heartwarming to see that and to hear it from people on the street. Another thing that happened, which again brings out this point, but even on a different way, is when we drove into Moldavia, we have Ukrainian license plates, and I stopped off on the side of the road to make sure that I was going the right way and to readjust my Google Maps. A car pulls up behind me. The man comes out of the car and he knocks on my window, and I open up and he says, "You're coming from Ukraine?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Do you need a place to stay? I have a home a few blocks away from here. You could just come to my home. Do you need food? Do you need money? What do you need? Whatever you need. I'm here for you. Whatever you need." And this scene repeated itself a few times when we were in Moldavia, then when we were in Romania. People were coming up to us and offering us their homes, their food, their whatever you need, whatever you want. Strangers off the street. You would imagine that in this type of a situation, people who have an extra apartment are going to cash in on this, because people are coming over the border. They need a place to stay. They're going to pay any price to be able to rent space. Instead of price gouging, there are signs on the streets in Moldavia, in Romania. People are putting up signs on their homes, like for sale signs: room available for free, home available for free. It's an incredible feeling to see such warmth, such love coming from humanity, just people, human people coming together and saying, we have to do something to help people. That's an incredible thing that I see that came out of this unfortunate situation, which is still becoming worse as we speak. So my message to everyone around the world is really that these are the things that are going to make this world a better place. This war or invasion, or whatever you want to call it, has no sense to it. It makes no sense. There's no explanation to it. Nobody understands why it's happening. There's no reason for it. I don't even know if the people invading know why they're doing it. The soldiers certainly don't. They themselves, a lot of them, have given themselves up and said, we don't know why we were sent here. We don't know. We thought we were coming for training. We didn't know that we were coming to fight. It's a nonsensical war, and it's suffering that's coming for no reason. And when that happens, the Rebbe taught us that when you see something happening that doesn't make sense, the answer to that is to do good, to try to add in any type of good deed, even if it makes no sense. So my message to everybody out there is, if there's a mitzvah that you haven't done yet because it doesn't make sense to you, because you feel you're not comfortable with it yet, do it. Do something that doesn't make sense to you or to anyone around you, because when you do something good that doesn't make sense, that is going to be the counter, and that is going to make an effect on senseless hate. When we do senseless love, senseless acts of goodness and kindness, that is what really is going to make a difference. Take a mitzvah. Could be putting up a mezuzah on your home if you don't have one yet. Kosher your kitchen if you haven't done it yet. put on tefillin every day, light Shabbat candles, start to keep Shabbat more than you did before. Anything that you feel is something that you could do or should do, but just haven't had the courage to actually do it, make an invasion into that space and do it. Go ahead, do something more and do it for the safety and security of the people in Ukraine and for people around the world. That will make our world a safer place, a better place, and that's what's going to bring Mashiach, which we really need, and hopefully will come really soon, so that we don't have to worry about all of these difficulties.
Rabbi Levitansky, if you can hear me there.
Yes.
So just
Yeah.
one or two quick questions, just to just other things that people have asked from before. Just if you could, there's the information of people who want to donate on the screen. If you want to donate to the Chabad and Sumi and Chabad in general in Ukraine, but also just what's happening now with the shul itself. The Torah is there. Is there someone that you've appointed to take care of those things? What's going on as far as the Chabad house and Chabad operations? Like, do you have people appointed that are taking care of things for you guys there?
Okay, good question. Our shul is really in the center of the city. It does have security, and there are people who are watching it, and local police, we have army actually now that's protecting the shul and our home. Unfortunately, only God can really protect it, especially if airplanes are flying and dropping bombs. There's not much that the local police are going to be able to do for that. What they are good for is that if there's any, just vandalism or things like that, they will protect. I did take the Torahs out of the shul and brought them to my home, where I have where we have our bomb shelter or our basement, and it's much more protected and locked up over there. And our home is actually the bomb shelter for our block. In our home we have a pretty large basement, which is secure. And when the sirens started going off after the first and second day, most of our neighbors came to ask us if they could join us in our basement, because the other bomb shelters are there from the Second World War. They haven't been touched since, and they're just full of garbage and mice, and not a very comfortable place to be, even if you have to hide and save your life. So one of our neighbors has the key to our home and is there to take care of that and allowing people to come to use it as shelter. And that's pretty much, I guess.
Right. How many Jews are left? Yeah, how many Jews do you think are left in Sumi? Your estimate.
If I knew how many Jews there were in Sumi, I could tell you how many are left. That I know of, we have about 400 people that are part of our community that we keep in touch with. And as of the past 2 days, thank God, we were able to take 175 people out of Sumi. 3 days ago, they opened up a humanitarian corridor, they call it, and we were able to get buses. We were able to bus these people out. Mainly, it's women and children that left, and the rest are still there. Many of them are elderly, they can't leave. Men can't leave the country anyway. How many Jews are left in Sumi that I know of? There's at least 225 that I know of on my list. The thing is that Ukraine in general, and especially cities like Sumi, the Jewish people that live there are great grandchildren of people who were hiding the fact that they were Jewish. So we're talking about 100 years of history that people already early in the 1917, 1918, people were changing their last names. taking the word Jew out of their passports, because to be a Jew was sometimes a death sentence, but at the best, it meant that you couldn't get into colleges. It meant you couldn't get a job. People wanted to get the word Jew out of their documents as much as possible. So their children might have known that their parents were Jewish. Their grandchildren probably don't know that their grandparents were Jewish. And we're dealing with their great grandchildren who have absolutely no clue that their great grandparents were Jewish. Most of the people in our community today didn't know that they were Jewish 10 years ago. It's just by chance, or like we say, by divine providence, that they bumped into me, and I started grilling them and ask every person that I meet, any of your grandparents Jewish, your great grandmother, great grandfather, somebody, anyone in your family Jewish? And usually you'll get the answer of, I have no idea. Sometimes you get the answer of, oh, my grandmother was Jewish, but that's it. I'm not Jewish. My parents aren't Jewish. Eventually, people start realizing that if their great grandmother was Jewish, that might mean that they're Jewish. And they start coming and they start becoming more involved. So how many Jews are there in Sumi is your guess is as good as mine. Our guesstimation is about 3,000 Jewish people. If somebody told me there are 10,000 Jewish people, I wouldn't be surprised.
Right. Another question, just I know for myself, and I'm probably speaking on for my colleagues that are on here as well, the other Chabad rabbis, just the thought of a community that you put your blood, tears, sweat into for 20, 25 years, and you build it up from brick by brick, day by day, and to see it all in many ways being destroyed almost overnight, obviously it's very, very devastating. I know from thinking about it myself, I've taken it very personally, just because I can feel what that must feel like to be in that position. And I just want to know from you what's giving you strength right now personally. What's giving you strength? What's giving you hope? And what's keeping you going at this point in time?
Yeah, that is a very difficult question. I must say that I get a lot of strength from my children, especially the youngest ones. They heard the song that Rabbi Goldstein made, I think. I believe in Hashem. I trust in Hashem. There's never a moment when I'm alone. I'm on my own. I believe and I trust in Hashem, something like that. And they go around singing this song all day long. They have they have pure faith, and they make us realize that the truth is, at the end of the day, it all is in God's hands. It's all in Hashem's hands. We do what we can. We do what we have to. But He's the one who makes the call. So if it means, that we have to be with our community and daven with them, and we have to teach them and help them grow as a community, then that's what we're doing. Now, Hashem wants us to protect our community physically, that they should be safe and alive. That's what we're doing. What's going to be when this all ends? My hope and my prayer is that Mashiach is going to be here already, and we won't have to deal with it. And if, God forbid, Mashiach is not here by then, as you say, it's a very, very difficult thing to think about. I must say that when I went to Romania, the shluchim that are the rabbis that are taking care of the center in Romania to bring in all of the refugees and take care of them are two rabbis, Rabbi Gupin and Rabbi Veshetsky, who were 10 years ago, they were the rabbis in Lugansk and Donetsk, which both of those are communities that were thriving Jewish communities up until 8 years ago, when the war broke out when Russia invaded Crimea. And then sent in Russian operatives to make havoc in Donetsk and Lugansk, and they had to move with their communities out of their cities, their entire infrastructure, everything they had. In Donetsk, they had a cheder and a high school and a Jewish university. They had a shul, a school from kindergarten up till 12th grade. The Donetsk community were the ones who began the kosher infrastructure in Ukraine. Incredible community that they had there. And one day they just in 2014 they had to pick up and leave. Many of them went to Israel or to Europe, and many of them went to Kiev. And Rabbi Veshetsky opened up a shul in Kiev, and he rebuilt his community in Kiev with those families that moved to Kiev from Donetsk. And for 8 years, he's been rebuilding his community in Kiev. Rabbi Gopin did the same thing. He also took another area in Kiev and rebuilt his community from Lugansk. And now they were forced out of Kiev. When the bombs started falling on Kiev, they were forced. So this is their second community that they're leaving behind, and they're the ones who are on the front lines now, helping refugees come over the border, housing them, feeding them, and sending them off to wherever they need to go. So watching those rabbis, I think of myself, and I think, I still have it okay. I mean, these are rabbis who, this is their second time they're going through this, and they're doing it with a smile. They're the ones that are giving a lot of courage and support to the other rabbis.
Yeah. Would you say that most people in Sumy, even though it's close to the border, are they pro the Ukrainians and they're supportive of Ukraine, staying in power there? Is that this general sentiment?
Sumi is definitely pro-Ukraine. And I might add that if there was any doubt in anyone's mind before the invasion, this invasion really it clinched it. This invasion has united Ukrainian citizens throughout Ukraine. Those that are in the West and the East, and some people who you have to understand also that the Sumskaya region is on the border. There are towns that are on the border, literally, meaning the line between Russia and Ukraine runs down the road. There are houses across the street in Russia and houses on the other side of the street in Ukraine. And the border runs through the village. And up until 2014, there was no border there. There was no fence. It was people just walked. You walked across the street without any documents. Even you were living in two countries, but it was one city, one town. After 2014, the border went up, and now that border is as strong as ever. Meaning, these invasions and these atrocities really that are being done are making people that live in Ukraine even more and more Ukrainian. It's pushed them into really taking that side, even if technically there isn't that distinction beforehand.
Okay, I want to take this opportunity to thank Rabbi Levitansky. Want to make sure he does get 2 hours of sleep maybe for the week tonight, so you can actually get some rest. And really, on behalf of all of us here, I just want you to know that I think I can speak for everyone that's on the Zoom and all of our communities, that we're definitely praying. I think everyone's trying to add in mitzvahs. Of course, lots of people donating. There are links here if you would like to help out, of course. And we just want to wish Rabbi Levitansky and all of his family, his colleagues, all the Jewish people in Ukraine, and really all humanity there, that we should be able to see the blessings really, really soon. We're about to come upon Purim. Purim is a time for great miracles historically for the Jewish people. And may this be a Purim of tremendous celebration, of tremendous joy, and really the ultimate celebration, which is, we hope this is going to be the final footsteps towards the final redemption. So again, thank you everyone for joining. And thank you, Rabbi Levitansky, and lots of blessings, success. We're all davening for you, praying for you, thinking about you, and all of your friends and colleagues and your family. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Have a wonderful evening.